Hello everybody, my name is Ratnos, and today we're taking a look at the Dungeon Journal for the Soul Hunters, Fractillus, and Nexus-King Salhadaar. These are the 5th, 6th, and 7th bosses, respectively, in the raid by Dungeon Journal order. Note that the layout of the raid, the Soul Hunters are allegedly an optional boss, so we'll have to see what exactly this means, but we're going to start off with them. It's a trio of 3 Demon Hunters, representing all 3 Demon Hunter specs: Havoc, Vengeance, and Voids? Question mark? New Demon Hunter spec? There's definitely a lot of hints that might be happening here, because Adaris is now a Demon Hunter, brimming with barely contained abyssal power, seeks to devour the void energy surrounding the Mana Forge. His deadly allies, the Havoc and Vengeance Demon Hunter, have joined Adaris in pursuit of a larger play. Together they will destroy all who oppose them, leaving nothing but chaos in their wake. So Adaris Duskblaze is the theorized new spec Demon Hunter. Devourer's Ire. Adaris hurls orbs of ravenous void at several locations, dealing cosmic damage to all players if not intercepted. So these are soaks that you have to catch. Adaris focuses his gaze upon players who intercepted these orbs, continually assaulting them with Consume and increasing their physical damage taken by 100%. Upon removal, Devourer's Ire transfers to a nearby player and inflicts cosmic damage to all players. So I guess whoever catches the orb gets fixated by the boss's Consume abilities and takes increased damage. But you can dispel it, but if you do dispel it, it does raid damage and then jumps to a nearby player. And then I guess maybe you need to dispel this onto your tanks or something, or off of players after they've been hit for too long. Consume is something... Okay, so Consume is going to apply something that maybe is part of the reason why you need to switch who's getting hit by this. So Consume says Adaris drains the essence of players that are afflicted with Devourer's Ire, dealing cosmic damage and putting a nasty healing absorb on them. It also, on Heroic and Mythic difficulty, applies an increased damage and healing absorb taken from Consume for 1 minute by 20%. So yeah, once you get a few stacks of this, you dispel the Devourer's Ire and it jumps to the nearest person, and then they tank it for a while. Okay, Void Step. Adaris tears open a path through the void and teleports to a new location, inflicting cosmic damage to players within 4 yards along the path to his destination. So I guess he's gonna... It's like a combination Shadow Step / Fell Rush, where it goes to wherever somebody is and then also damages everybody in the line. That could be a really fun player ability. I'm just saying, that could be a fun one for the spec to have, for sure. During this movement, Adaris manifests images of himself, which cast Hungering Slash. These deal cosmic damage to players within 8 yards and coalesce a pool of encroaching oblivion. This is a growing expanse of void that deals damage and increases the damage taken of players that are standing in it. The void spreads over time, but if you have Devourer's Ire, you can stand in it and soak it, and it will shrink the size. So you maybe don't even take damage. You greedily consume the essence if you have Devourer's Ire. So whoever you dispel the Devourer's Ire onto is now also responsible for soaking these encroaching oblivion defile puddles, basically. Eradicate is a mythic mechanic where Adaris conjures a scythe-wielding shadow that dashes behind players and cleaves through them, dealing cosmic damage to all players struck. So whoever gets targeted by this presumably runs away from the raid, right? The raid's in, an 180-degree arc. And then whoever's getting targeted takes it to the sides or behind the boss, something like that. Then we have the Havoc Demon Hunter, which has the Hunt. The boss marks a target as her prey, charges towards them, deals a 70 million chaos damage. This effect is reduced for each player standing in the path of it. So this is one of those soak lines that everybody gets inside of. The boss additionally strikes players along the path, dealing 9 million chaos damage to players within 4 yards of each player struck. So you're going to want to spread within the line, right? You're going to want to make it a long line and have everybody within it be not 4 yards close to anybody else. In Mythic, the Hunt marks multiple players simultaneously, and players in the path of the Hunt are afflicted with Weakened Prey, which says if you take another Hunt within 10 seconds, you're going to take 500% increased damage. So the boss is going to hunt at maybe 2 or 3 people, and then they're all going to have to spread. You're going to want a left, maybe a middle, and a right one. And then you don't have anybody soaking all 3, except for maybe the tanks can stand in all 3 and pop a defensive or something. Because if you're in multiple of them, you're taking 600% total damage of one, which is a lot. Blade Dance, the boss slashes at nearby locations, dealing damage to players caught in the effect. I-Beam, this is a tank mechanic that says the boss I-Beams you. You might be familiar with that mechanic if you've ever seen a Demon Hunter before. This also applies Fell Singed every 0.5 seconds to players within the beam and knocks them back. After the blast concludes, the boss will Fellblade you. Now, on Mythic difficulty, Fell Singed is a stacking debuff that you get from the I-Beam that increases the damage of I-Beam and Fellblade for 40 seconds as well. Fellblade, the boss will dash to you and deal fire damage and fire damage over time for 25 seconds. So this might be a mechanic where you swap midway through or even at the end of this cast so that a different tank has the Fell Singe stacks from the one that takes the Fellblade. Or maybe you can't do that. Maybe it locks in the target at the start, in which case you just have to have a defensive going for this, and then you swap after you get hit by that Fellblade. And then finally we have Fell Inferno, which is just an immolation aura, basically, that does damage to the whole raid. And it also creates Pillars of Inferno. The flame inflicts damage to any player who steps into the firestorm. So the boss is going to, like, immo aura the whole arena and also make a fire tornado every time she does that you're not going to want to stand in. Then we have the Vengeance Demon Hunter. This one has a tank mechanic that deals a bunch of physical damage and applies Shattered Soul. This strike cleaves the target's soul into fragments, which each maintain frailty on the target until another player collects the fragment. So maybe the two tanks are going to help each other with this, or maybe you're going to need other people to help, because you take 125% increased damage taken from Fracture. So actually, just if you take Fracture, you don't take the next one, because that doesn't go away when your soul gets captured. But while you have frailty, you get a 33% healing reduction that stacks, and maybe you'll get multiple stacks of this when it comes out. And anybody else can walk over it and take a 2 million chaos damage dot every 3 seconds for 30 seconds. So only 600,000 DPS for 30 seconds from this dot. Not too nasty, but it does stack. And then that clears the healing absorbs from your tank. So what might happen is you have one tank tanking the Havoc DH, one tank tanking the Vengeance DH, and then you swap every time, they do the Fracture or the I-Beam, and the other tank soaks the frailty soul fragments of the tank that is taking the Fracture at any given time. Spirit Bomb, the boss explodes, deals damage plus damage over time to all players, and applying Soul Crush. Any fragments still present from Fracture are also destroyed here, so you're going to want to make sure those get soaked, because otherwise it applies Expulsed Soul to all players, which looks like a pretty lethal amount of... Actually, it's not that lethal. It's 800,000 DPS to all players for 20 seconds. So yeah, that's a lot of extra healing, but you can maybe live a stack. And then Soul Crush also makes players absorb the next 4 million healing received. On Mythic, we have Sigil of Chains, which takes 2.5 seconds to activate, and then all players are pulled to its center and snared, reducing movement by 40% for 6 seconds. That could be really nasty if it overlaps with other stuff as well. And then we have Immo Aura. Okay, so in addition to the other boss having a sort of Immo Aura ability, the Vengeance DH just has Immo Aura, which hits the whole raid. It's not proximity based, it looks like. Now, we have 3 intermissions, 1 for each boss. Adaris enshrouds the arena in void and attempts to draw all players into a collapsing star. This begins to pull players towards its center. Stellar fragments rain down and are pulled towards the center of the star. So maybe swirlies that land far from it and then start getting gripped in after they land. If a player hits them, it deals 1.4 million cosmic damage to that player and leaves behind Dark Residue, which is a dot that stacks for 5 seconds. If the fragments reach the center, they instead deal 4.2 million cosmic damage to all players. And so you're going to want to soak these, but not soak too many all at once. Also, if you stand inside the black hole, it is bad. That's a consistent through line. All black holes are not to be stood in. That applies to all the WoW bosses and also in real life too. That's a handy thing to just if you need a quick reminder, don't stand in the black hole. Soul Tether is a mythic mechanic as well. The casters bind several players together for 24 seconds, causing them to snap towards each other and take 4.2 million chaos damage if they move farther than 15 yards apart. So this is going to be basically an intermission where you're dodging swirlies, soaking the stars that are being pulled in towards the black hole, making sure that you don't get pulled into the black hole, and making sure that you don't get more than 15 yards away from whoever you're tethered to as well. Now, the Havoc Demon Hunter instead scours the arena with Fell Rush. This one manifests echoes of the Havoc DH for 24 seconds, which rush forward, incinerating everything in their path for 9 million chaos damage. So maybe the boss is going to split into a bunch of images. They'll be around the arena, and you'll have to... Hopefully you can see on the ground, or maybe you have to look at the images, like at the last boss of Theater of Pain, and see where they're going to charge, and then not be there. There's also Soul Tether here during this intermission. And then finally, we have the Unrelenting Pain. So maybe all three of these intermissions happen simultaneously, or maybe they take turns, or maybe it's when you push each boss to 50%. I don't see any mechanics about them healing or doing something when one of them dies, which makes me think they share health, but maybe those mechanics just aren't in the dungeon journal just yet. So the Vengeance DH intermission, we have the boss leaping to a location, dealing fire damage to all players within 18 yards and knocking them away. Feldev is Feldev that damages all players within the effect for 4.5 seconds, and it also leaves behind Withering Flames, which slows all players' hit. And then again, there's also still Soul Tether here. So yeah, this strikes me as a mechanic that wouldn't be too much to deal with by itself, but if you're simultaneously dodging Fell Rushes, dodging the Infernal Strike, dodging the Frontal Cone, soaking the Stellar Fragments, getting gripped in towards a star, not getting gripped into the star, but making sure you don't actually get gripped into it, and staying within 15 yards of your partner, that could be an extremely hectic intermission that sounds like a very bullet hell type thing. That sounds really fun, so we'll see how it actually turns out. Up next, we have Fractillus. This is a Taros-looking guy. An elemental born of the crags and dunes surrounding the Maniforge. Fractillus guards his domain by harnessing the power of the biting sands and hardened glass of the inhospitable wastes. Crystal Nexus is the first mechanic, which is a crystalline wall of void energy. It explodes upon impact, launching shrapnel. Shrapnel is launched at a location, and don't get hit by it, because it will deal damage if it does. We have Brittle Nexus, which is a mythic mechanic. This is a brittle wall of void energy, which also explodes upon impact, launching Nexus Explosion, and applies Crystal Lacerations to all players. Crystal Lacerations is an 8-second dot that stacks, and Nexus Shrapnel is still the thing to dodge. So right off the bat, we have two different kinds of wall, a normal one and a mythic one. And when you break the normal one, it just makes swirlies. When you break the mythic one, it does an 8-second dot on everybody, so you're going to only want to break one of these every 8 seconds, and it also still does the swirlies. Now, the Void-Infused Nexus is a wall infused with void energy, which explodes upon impact. This is a heroic wall, and also, so it launches the shrapnel, and it also does null consumption to the player. So it applies Void Infusion to the player that broke it, which I assume is null consumption, maybe. Or maybe it's a different mechanic somewhere down here. Infuses multiple players with void energy, dealing damage every second for 6 seconds. On expiration, you explode, dealing damage to all players within 10 yards. So maybe the player that broke it and other players get hit by this null consumption. And then you have to spread at the end of this dot and explode away from other players. Okay, so we know there's 3 different kinds of walls that the boss makes. On Mythic, and less on the lower difficulties. Now, let's see what the other mechanics are. The boss pounds the ground, dealing shadow damage to all players and triggering multiple entropic shockwaves. These shockwaves deal 4 million shadow damage every 2 seconds for 12 seconds to anybody hit, so don't get hit by the shockwaves. They also make crystal nexi, so you're going to want to, I guess, break those by running into them at certain times, whenever it'll be easy to dodge the shrapnel that they make. Crystalline Backhand is a sweeping backhand that deals shadow damage to all players and knocking back players that are afflicted by Crystallized. Crystallization is the boss begins transforming players to crystal, which deals damage every second for 8 seconds. Upon expiration, you get rooted. Interesting. So some players get turned into crystals, and then those are the players that get knocked back when the boss does the backhand, but it roots you as well. Interesting. I'll have to see how this works. There's a bunch of different things that this kind of could mean, so we'll have to see. And then finally, we have Shockwave Slam. The boss slams his target, dealing physical damage, increasing damage taken by Shockwave Slam by 500% for 55 seconds, and triggering an entropic shockwave. This is another one of those shockwaves that deals damage if you get hit by it, and also makes more walls. So the Dungeon Journal is in a bit of a state here. I don't really know what exactly this fight's going to look like, but it seems like there are these walls, normal, mythic, and heroic walls, they'll all launch shrapnel, but the mythic and heroic ones are more intricate than that, and you're going to want to be careful to not break too many at once to avoid getting overwhelmed by the other mechanics that they do. And then, presumably, how those work is going to be really important to how this boss works. You'll maybe need to break the walls to make space to dodge the shockwaves, or maybe the walls just fill up the room faster than you can break them, or maybe if they get hit by the shockwaves, that's what breaks them. But the fact that it says the player that broke it here makes me think that it is a player running into a wall that does break it. So, yeah, let's see. This is the boss that is the least clear to me from the Dungeon Journal exactly how it will work. It is going to be one of those bosses that's rooted in place, presumably with like a full ring around it. So that could be really fun. These bosses are historically really fun, and it's late in the raid as well. So my dream is a Tarot-style boss with a third to last boss level of difficulty. That sounds really fun to me. But I will admit, I have no idea what this is going to look like from the Dungeon Journal. The penultimate boss is Nexus-King Salhadaar, who was once the ruler of Koresh, which is the planet that the Ethereals are from, where this boss fight and the whole patch are happening. So this guy was in charge, and he was sworn to defeat Dimensius, but he reveals that he formed a pact with the very being that shattered his homeworld. Atop his royal void wing, he commands the Shadow Guard to ensure the return of his master, Dimensius. In Stage 1, we have Oathbreakers. Salhadaar forces players under oath and tests their will against the void. So we have Decree Oathbound. Salhadaar declares a trial of loyalty, inflicting 3.3 million shadow damage to all players every 1 second for 6 seconds, and giving them all 3 stacks of Oathbound. On heroic difficulty, attacks that would otherwise kill the player instead convert them into King's Thralls. They mind control you, full heal you, and make you deal 100% increased damage. Each time you clear a stack of Oathbound, it looks like, you will deal a blast of raid damage as well. So basically the boss is going to hit everybody with 3 stacks of Oathbound. If you die while you have them, you get MC'd. And when you clear them, which presumably you can do with the future mechanics that we're about to read, it pulses for some raid damage. So kind of like Sire Denathrius when he gave you all 6 stacks of Sin at the start of the fight, and then you needed to clear them before the intermission, but each time you did, stuff would happen. That sort of seems like what Decree Oathbound is going to be here. Vengeful Oath is a mythic mechanic. Broken Oaths return to haunt you, manifesting as ethereal spirits that dart into players. Failing to face it returns a stack of Oathbound. So you clear your oath, and then it's a ghost spawns, and you need to turn and look at it, and then it won't give you the stack back. But if you don't, you will get the stack back, and you'll have still done the raid damage to everybody as well. So, yeah, that's going to be very important to not have happen. Subjugation Rule is a tank mechanic combo. We have Conquer and Vanquish. Conquer deals 84 million physical damage and 84 million shadow damage split among all players within 8 yards, knocking them upwards. Players struck lose a stack of Oathbound and increasing damage taken from Conquer by 500% for 20 seconds. So this might be one of those combos where it does 2 Conquers and a Vanquish, something like that. Vanquish, instead, cleaves the current target, dealing 22 million physical damage and 30 million shadow damage to all players in front of him, knocking them away. Increases damage taken from Vanquish by 500% for 20 seconds. So it strikes me that Conquer is going to be something that you soak maybe with a group 1 and a group 2, because it does clear your Oathbound stacks. And it does 84 million physical damage, and then it splits 84 million shadow damage. So if this hits 10 players, it's 8 million shadow damage each. So your tank's going to take 84 million fizz and 8 million shadow, which you can live that for sure. And then maybe you taunt a different tank to take the Vanquish, or you take 1 Conquer and 1 Vanquish, and then the other tank taunts and takes the second Conquer or the second Vanquish, depending on what the combo looks like. The Vanquish looks like it's supposed to only hit the tank. It knocks them away, which makes me think that's when the other tank would taunt, is after that knock away. And it doesn't say anything about splitting damage or clearing stacks of Oathbound, so this makes me think it's something you only want to hit the tank. And this one deals 22 million physical damage, which is basically nothing for a tank, and 30 million shadow damage, which is basically a lot for a lot of tanks. Basically nothing for a few tanks, but basically a lot for most tanks, especially warriors. No more spell block, that thing's gone. So yeah, this is going to be something where you use your magic DRs on Vanquish, you use your physical DRs on Conquer, and you soak conquer with 1, 2, or 3 different groups maybe, and you don't soak vanquish. Banishment exiles several players, dealing shadow damage every second for 8 seconds. Upon expiration, each target bursts with Torturous Void, dealing 2.8 million shadow damage. So maybe people are going to get sent away and take this dot, or maybe this just hits different people at different times, and then when the dot expires, they take damage. Invoke the Oath deals 12 million damage to all players. Anybody who's still Oathbound is converted into King's Thrall. So again, very similar to Sire Denathrius P1. Anybody who still has Burden of Sin at the end of the during the intermission is toast, right? So you got to clear all of your stacks by then. Tyranny deals damage to all players every 2 seconds, so that's just ticking raid damage for the healers to heal. Now the boss has a mount, the Royal Voidwing, which splits into several images that mirror its attacks. It attempts to execute players that get too close, dealing 14 million, but pretty much a zillion cosmic damage. Don't get too close to it. The Voidwing also shreds through a player with its claws, dealing 8.4 million cosmic damage and dragging any player caught within their path. Cosmic Rip, it also leaves behind a fissure that deals nasty cosmic damage too. And then finally, the Voidwing has Besiege, where it sweeps across the sky, exhaling a breath that inflicts 7 million cosmic damage every 0.3 seconds to any player within the effect. So basically, you're going to have to watch out for these the fractal images of the Voidwing. Don't get close to them. Don't get beheaded. Don't get besieged. Then in Stage 2, Rider of the Dark. Salhadaar orders the draconic images to converge back into one as he takes his rightful seat atop the Royal Voidwing. So fractal images dissolve from view as they reintegrate beings. The coalesced Voidwing pierces up from below, inflicting 67 million cosmic damage to any player hit and knocking all players back. So this will be like the boss, summons the thing and it's a big thing on the ground and get out of it, otherwise you're going to die. Netherbreaker, the boss hurls his mace, which ricochets between several targets, inflicting 10 million shadow damage within 5 yards of each impact. So this might be one of those things where like 3 or 4 people get targeted and you want to spread in such a way that it doesn't cleave multiple people, and also you don't stack within 5 yards of each other as you're being targeted. And then we still have the ticking raid damage. In P2, the single Voidwing now, no longer images, unleashes a galactic beam from its jaws for 4 seconds, dealing 3.5 million cosmic damage to any player within it every 0.3 seconds. So that's a lethal amount of damage if you stand in it for even a couple of ticks. Several portals tear open, from which this breath is emitted in additional directions. So the boss is going to breathe, and it's going to breathe into a portal, and then there'll be a portal somewhere else in the room out of which that breath will come, and maybe it'll go even into another portal, and then out in a different way. We'll have to see how this exactly is telegraphed, but it does sound pretty sick. Basically just a lot of beams to dodge, but the flavor is that it's just one beam going through portals. On Mythic difficulty, anybody hit gets Dimension Glare. The target's existence unravels after 2 seconds, inflicting cosmic damage proportional to the damage taken from Dimensional Breath to all players. Ooh. So maybe this is aimed at the tank and they have to get hit, and then they have to use a defensive against this to avoid it being too much damage. Because, a big defensive, you could live this as a tank and then use more defensives to make this hit your raid less hard. Seems sort of like a Blood DK special. Anti-Magic Shell plus a big DR would make this do very little and has a short enough cooldown. You could do that pretty much every time. Cosmic Maw is another tank mechanic here. The Voidwing shreds its current target between stellar jaws, inflicting 70 million physical damage. The target's essence is devoured, inflicting an additional 1.9 million cosmic damage every 0.3 seconds and increasing damage taken from Dimension Breath by 200% for 10 seconds. So basically, somebody gets the jaws and then somebody else taunts before the breath is probably how this is going to work. And then we still have Behead as well, so you're still going to want to dodge that and dodge the fissures that it leaves behind. Then we have Intermission 1, Nexus Descent. Elite Shadow Guard reinforcements arrive as Salhadaar continues to seal the Mana Forge. So the boss is going to summon a wave of Shadow Guard that arrive at each side of the loading bay. We have a Titan that's going to self-destruct if you don't kill it before it reaches 100 energy. It also launches swirlies that you're going to want to dodge. We have some Nexus Princes, Kyvor, which both of these have a shield for 50% of their max HP. Both of them blast cosmic beams in several directions that you don't want to get hit by. And both of them do a cast. Presumably this cast will be interruptible only after you break through the Twilight Barrier. That's typically what I would expect given these. And you're going to want to stop this because it deals a boatload of shadow damage. So this is going to be kind of like Gallywix or Ansarek intermissions where you have adds that spawn. And you're going to want to maybe split into 2 groups that go to the different sides, one where each Nexus Prince is. And you're going to want to break the shield so you can kick it, and then maybe switch your damage to kill the Titan while you just cleave them down once they're kickable. My guess is that Curse of Tongues is going to work on these, despite it probably not being supposed to be able to work on these, and that will be a core part of the strategy as well. Shadowguard Reaper is here as well with Twilight Massacre. This takes aim at a player before dashing through them, dealing shadow damage to any player in its path. Inflicts significant damage to Twilight Barrier if struck. Okay, so you break the barrier on the Nexus Princes by dashing the Massacres through them from the Reaper friends. The Reapers also shadow step behind players and leave behind a dot as well, so that's going to need to get healed. Salhadaar also is trying to funnel energy into the door of the Mana Forge during this, dealing damage every second to players within 70 yards and pushing them away. So this is all going to be happening away from the door of the Mana Forge where Salhadaar is RPing. Also, Salhadaar takes 99% reduced damage during this time. There's still also the ticking raid damage. The Voidwing is also given that 99% DR during this. In Intermission 2, called King's Hunger, Salhadaar consumes the energy of the Royal Voidwing to revitalize and empower himself. He drains the energy from the Voidwing, increasing its damage taken by 100%, and pulsing damage to the entire raid every second for 30 seconds. Upon completion, he heals himself equal to the Voidwing's remaining health as the Drake fades from existence. So you're going to want to focus damage into the Drake because it's taking extra damage, and you're going to want to kill it before this 30 seconds is up. Maybe you're going to want to time it so that it's exactly at that 30-second mark that you finish this as well. It does look like the boss still has the damage reduction, though, so there's not going to be too much value in milking this for extra time because it's not like you can cleave off of the boss during this. And then it looks like the Voidwing is still going to be doing Behead during this, even while its energy is being drained by its master. Finally, we have World in Twilight. Salhadaar stands alone as the final champion of the Void Lord's return. Galactic Smash says images of Salhadaar emerge alongside him to smash their targets with galactic force, applying Twilight Scar and inflicting 11.5 million cosmic damage to all players. Players farther from each target take less damage. Salhadaar's primary target is Star Shattered. A dark star forms at each impact location. These dark stars pull players towards its center for 5 seconds. Upon emergence, players within it are atomized as Twilight Spikes ripple outward. Atomizing is not a good thing. You don't want that to happen to you. Twilight Spikes you also don't want to get hit by. The Dark Star orbits around the arena. On Mythic difficulty, the violent consumption of a Starkiller Nova causes the Dark Star to reverse orbit. Collision with another Dark Star inflicts cosmic damage to all players every 0.5 seconds. Okay, so the boss is going to make these Dark Stars, wherever they form, it's bad news for you, and then they rotate around the arena, and you might need to use the Starkiller Nova to get them to reverse orbit so that they don't run into each other, because that will kill you, it looks like. Okay. There is also Twilight Scar, which looks like just raid damage. Star Shattered, which looks like a tank swap. Yep. Starkiller Swing. Images of Salhadaar emerge alongside him to erupt a galactic missile at their targets, dealing 11 million cosmic damage to all players in his path and applying Twilight Scar. So again, this is a dot. I guess both of these apply this dot. Yeah, well, this one actually doesn't say. The smash doesn't say how you get the dot, but the swing. So the boss does the smash that makes the stars, and then the swing, which makes the novas. If you're hit by the swing, you get this dot, maybe of the smash as well. The blast blackens the sky, dealing cosmic damage to all players, inflicting 30 million cosmic damage to all players. Ooh, okay. The primary target is also Star Shattered. So both times, the primary target gets Star Shattered, so you're going to want to taunt between this. And each missile detonates in a nova unless consumed. So maybe you need to shoot the missiles into the black holes, which will reverse their direction on Mythic. And that, so okay, imagine it goes like this. The boss makes a star. The star starts rotating the arena around the arena. Then the boss shoots a missile, and you need to shoot that missile into the star, which causes it to reverse directions. Okay, that's all fine. Then the boss makes another star, and now you have 2 stars, maybe going the same direction or maybe going opposite directions. And then the boss does another missile, and so maybe the 2 stars are going opposite directions, and then you need to use the other missile to fix the star that is to have one of them go back so that they're now going in the same direction and not going to hit each other, right? Or maybe the boss makes the second star to be going in the same direction as the first star, which would be the opposite direction that the first star was first going. And then the second swing maybe shoots out 2 missiles, and you have to get a missile into each of the black holes. And then maybe the third swing makes 3 missiles, and you have to get each missile into a different star to get them to rotate in the different direction, or in the same direction as each other. Either way, that seems sick. This is not an awful lot of mechanics, even though it sounds very complicated. So I imagine there are more Phase 3 mythic mechanics that are not in the Dungeon Journal. That's often true for Phase 3s of penultimate bosses, tend to be where the Dungeon Journal starts not having everything just yet. So yeah, we'll have to see, but this sounds incredibly sick. We'll have to see exactly how it is implemented. Anyways, that's going to be it for this video. Hope you've enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.